that right side of the hedgerow covered to the west.
I've got eyes on, direct south of the barn, probably 200 meters out.
I got contacts west 280.
Wooden stacks.
Taking pot shots. I don't think they see.
One more guy out
There he
the
is,
trees.
230, right on the south side of the hedgerow.
Got him. He's down.
Shoot. There's three of them. I'm down. They're at the hay bales.
Hello everyone and welcome to our second episode of DevView. My name is Nick and I'm the owner of Gameumentary, and I have Max Ray joining me today from the Black Matter development team. They're currently working on a rather ambitious World War II first-person shooter called Hell Let Loose. So Max, tell me a bit about Black Matter. You guys kind of showed up out of nowhere on my Twitter feed one day, and I'm a big history buff and I love World War II shooters, so obviously Hell Let Loose immediately went on my radar.
Yeah, I mean, I think we seemed to take quite a few people by surprise actually when we sort of revealed the title back in June. But initially we were a team of three, myself, Rick and Roman are the two other team members who are sort of the core full-time guys on this. And then since we revealed and a little bit before, we've started accumulating more and more different team members. Obviously, making a game of this size and scale is much more complex than the task of three people, especially when you look at kind of what we're trying to achieve as an overall package. So since then, we've been working with many more people, and now we're Black Matter, which is, I think, around 11 or 12 different developers and artists around the world.
So tell me about yourself as a game developer, like your personal backstory with games.
I really started as an enthusiast, obviously. I play games for a very long time. I think that's a pretty common story, but I actually wasn't working in the game industry, and I haven't worked in the game industry until developing Hell Let Loose. In fact, prior to working on Hell Let Loose full time, I actually worked in the film industry, in visual effects, coordinating and producing the visual effects for television shows, from films, and other things like that. So if you know anything about visual effects, it's obviously, it exists in the 3D world. It uses the same programs as games use, but obviously a vastly different beast. So I was working in the film industry. I began working on Hell Let Loose sort of as a hobby, and after about a year and a half or so of doing that in kind of a hobbyist capacity, we really reached a turning point where we felt that we had more game than we didn't. We had more game than not, and excuse me, I really switched my gears and began focusing on this full time, building the team and everything like that.
You said it started off as like a hobby project. When did you guys decide that it was like, this is going to be a full on game that we're going to, expand upon? Yeah,
I think probably in September, October last year, we really looked at what we had and we figured, for us, the experience was cumulative. Everything that a team member would do would encourage the rest of the team, and we'd been working a bit like that, doing pieces where we could, building stuff where we could, and every time we did that, the rest of the team was encouraged, and the rest of the team was encouraged to push forward and continue their own development. And so we sort of propelled each other onwards, and we really got to that stage in I think it was September last year, where September of 2016, where we looked at what we had and we thought, look, we either give this a really big go and we really, get this done and get this out, or we stop and we walk away from it. And we decided on the former.
Basically, basic terms, what would you say Hell Let Loose is, aside from obviously being, a World War II shooter?
I think the way we think about it is it's a shooter for adults. It's a shooter for people who want to play a World War II experience that's not only a larger scale, but that rewards stuff that is complementary to actual battle. Things like positioning, things like overall strategy. Obviously, you have the tactics of a firefight, but we wanted to create a game that we could sit down and get into and work together and have a really strong teamwork experience that felt like it wasn't trying to hold your hand the whole time, that it wasn't incentivizing you to do everything. We wanted to play because we found the game fun, not because we needed to unlock stuff.
Mm-hmm. When I was watching the gameplay that you just showed me a few minutes ago, I was actually kind of thrown back a little bit because I was expecting, a lot of action, and then I kind of went through your website. It's like 4-kilometer maps, so it seems like when action happens in the game, it's actually a really big deal.
Yeah, I mean, you've hit the nail on the head. The way we think about it is many, I'd say, larger shooters, many mainstream, if you want to call them that, shooters, are sort of like a Michael Bay movie. Everything is always exploding, and their metric for success is how quickly are things exploding in front of the player, how quickly is the player shooting. And I mean, if you're like me, I like my Michael Bay and my blockbusters every now and then, but if that's all that's on offer and it's only explosions, and all you experience is explosions and action, then from my perspective, I don't feel as connected or engaged, or I don't feel the weight of drama on what's going on the screen, because it's just always happening. Whereas what we've found is with games like Hell Let Loose, and what we're trying to do in Hell Let Loose, is create that Saving Private Ryan experience where there can be quiet. There can be that point where you're walking through the countryside and you're chatting and you're having a good time. And then you need to put your game face on. And when action does break out, it gets really, really, really intense and really quick and really brutal. So that's kind of the flavor we're trying to capture. And we feel that the tension and the terror of when you actually get into combat is more interesting, at least to us, than just constant explosions and constant firing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's why a lot of people are really into PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, is because, you see somebody, it's like, oh shit, I could die and this could be it. Instead of just, I'm going to respawn and come back and I don't have to worry about anything else.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. We're big PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds players. I think also PlayerUnknown came out at a really great time for us because it really made mainstream voice communications in small groups of players. That's going to be really important for us to succeed in our game design as we wish players to engage with it. And the other game that I think really allowed us to do this, and it seems silly to say it, but when you look at games like Squad and other things, but DayZ, in so much as DayZ's sold very, very well, and it was punishing to play. I think it really, from a mainstream perspective, it really opened the market up and said to, I think, developers, you don't have to coddle your player in order for them to really engage and really have an amazing time within the game. But obviously, DayZ, we're talking about sort of 4 or 5 years ago. But PlayerUnknown would be the current equivalent, I reckon.
Sure. So let's just walk me through what a match of Hell Let Loose is like.
Yeah, so obviously you mentioned it's the 4-kilometer square map, which is 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers. The map is divided up into 25 capture sectors, and both teams start in the opposite corners. Obviously the Germans in the German main base, the US in the US main base. You will essentially load the game. You'll enter the server. You'll be asked to select a team. You'll only be able to select a team that we've got about a buffer of 2 players, so you can't stack very easily. And then you'll enter the deploy screen, and you'll be able to get a picture of what's going on in the battlefield at that moment, where your team's at, what their territory control is like, etc. What you then can do is select to join one of 3 different types of platoons. And the platoons basically have a rough function of limiting player kits and focusing players' purpose within the game. So let's say you join an infantry platoon and you select to grab the engineer kit. What you'll then do is spawn into the main base, or you might choose to spawn on the OP, which is kind of the forward spawn for your platoon. Or you can spawn on a garrison, which is the team spawn. So the garrison and the OPs are both player built. They're placed in the map. So let's say it's the very start of a game. We don't have any OPs or garrisons down. We're going to spawn at main base. once you're in at main base, I think you'll sense the camaraderie and the busyness. Obviously, you've got 50 players on your team, and you've got players loading up into different, a really wide variety of vehicles. You've got them beginning to mount artillery pieces, and you've got them forming up in platoons, sort of near where the base exits. What then happens is you guys will move out into the field, and talking to the commander, you'll basically hopscotch from point to point, capturing territory as quickly as you can until you reach that front line. And where that front line is totally dependent on how far the enemy has managed to capture into the grand total of the map.
So almost kind of plays out like a real-time strategy game, like Company of Heroes in a first-person view.
That's exactly right. Yeah, Company of Heroes, definitely. I mean, Company of Heroes is what I was looking at emulating when, we laid down the first initial design documents for the game. Since then, though, Steel Division is also a really great benchmark for that sense of tension as you push forward into a map. So both of those titles have really had an effect on the way that we look at what we do.
Yeah, you also have 100 players per game, so I'm imagining it's like these kind of sound like the full-scale battles people have always wanted from a World War II game.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We've just been playtesting it quite a lot recently, and having this sounds silly for me to say this, but I've actually been finding it quite fun. Like I've been able to look past the bugs, which obviously that's kind of all I see sometimes. And it's been fun to kind of play test and work out the dynamic of the battlefield. And what we've really found is it's quite interesting. In other games, the action is very focused, obviously, around a certain area, a certain landmark. And you're very conscious of the map bounds around you, the edge of the map. In this, you can sort of keep walking and you will come into another platoon on the line, and they might be engaged with their own enemy force, and you might wander into that quite happily or quite unhappily, and either be surprised or surprise the enemy. So it does feel like very much there's a front line and there's action all the way along it, and you're free to move as you will. From action to action and reinforce and do sorts of things like that.
So what happens when you take out a player in a match zone? I guess a better question would be like, how does somebody win?
Yeah,
do they have to get to the other side of the map and completely take out all their spawn points, or what?
So the victory condition for the game, I mean, we're calling our game mode Warfare because it's quite hard. It's not team deathmatch, and it's certainly not assault and secure in the traditional sense. But in Warfare, the way that you win is the same way that they recorded the victories of battles. Or obviously, this is an arguable point, but the way they recorded the victories of battles in World War II, namely who has the most territory, who at the end of the day has stopped with the most territory. We're not really looking at the casualty count because you can win battles, obviously, with a higher casualty rate. But it's basically who has the most territory. Teams can force a victory by capturing the territory adjacent to the enemy's main base. We don't want people to be sitting in their main base being spawn camped as they leave it. So if that territory is captured, that's a loss for your team.
So, this is a pretty ambitious game for such a small team of people. How challenging has it been for you to develop something like this?
Yeah, I have some very patient family members, friends, and people around me who have been really supportive obviously of me, but obviously our other team members have similar family members and friends who are also supportive of them and don't mind if they disappear for hours and hours and hours to work on the game. I mean, yeah, I'm now doing it full time, which is making a huge difference. Otherwise, I was having to work from kind of 9:30 at night till 3 in the morning. So working on it full time now has been a real blessing, and it's becoming easier and easier and easier. I've got to say that at the start it was harder. or at least we had different problems. But now we have obviously more problems, but we have the resources to fix them. So I mean, it's a hard answer, but I think that's kind of the key, is that now there's many more problems, but we definitely are able to fix them, and we're able to work with people who can fix them.
So what's your long-term strategy for Hell Let Loose? I'm assuming this is, well, I guess I can't really assume, but is this going to be a free-to-play game, or is it going to be, a game as a service?
We're going to charge a single fee for the game. The idea being that we're not, we don't really like the idea of a subscription model. I don't think a lot of the community would like the idea of a subscription model. So we're charging a one-off fee for the base game, which we're considering to be, at least 8 maps, and a really wide variety of content. US forces, German forces. We're going to look at other forces as well within that. And then we, and this is kind of what we've been chatting to the community about from the start, is we have quite a long-term plan for this. Instead of supporting it for kind of a year and then moving on to something else, our plan really is to iterate on this and really build the World War II vision that we had when we started. That means other content, more maps, more theatres, more forces. And we want to really support Hell Let Loose going forward. Definitely creating a second installment, but obviously 4 or 5 years in the future, when we feel that we've exhausted the technical capabilities of what we have right now.
Sure. So you mentioned 8 maps there. Can players expect a D-Day map in there?
Yeah,
that's something you're keeping behind the scenes.
That's been hotly debated. Yeah, it's hard. I've been thinking about it. I mean, I think so. I think I'd like to do Utah Beach, or a beach that hasn't been done. I know Omaha. Everyone knows Omaha because of Saving Private Ryan, and also because of the sheer amount of action they saw. But yeah, it's an interesting question. I think we'd probably do Utah and the push inland from Utah, because that actually directly precedes the Sainte Marie du Mont map that we're doing right now, which will be our first map. But yeah, I think we have to include the beaches. Plus, I think it'd be fun to do a beach environment, do the Atlantic Wall and all that sort of thing. So I think our grand goal for the game is that you'd be able to fight almost in a Band of Brothers-esque way from the beaches all the way through to Belgium, the Ardennes, the Battle of the Bulge, possibly even into Germany.
I can't really recall any World War II shooter that has really tackled the Battle of the Bulge. Like, that's one environment I've always wanted to play a game in.
Oh yeah, me too. I mean, the fun thing about doing this is being able to kind of create the world that you envisioned when you've played other games. So for me, I've already begun on a Foy map, which is using, obviously, just like Sainte Marie du Mont, we're using a satellite picture of the area, and then we're setting it up in the same way so that teams originate from their real destinations. But it's awesome, just the snow, the pine trees. We've got some really dense fog in there. I think it's going to be a pretty scary map where a lot of players will be forced into kind of close quarters, or at least charging through the fog as they play.
Yeah, when I was looking at the gameplay that you said as well, like, unknown studios, there's always kind of that, well, is it going to be polished? I mean, your gunplay actually looks really polished. I'm curious, like, if you have people that are veterans from DICE or any other, Infinity Ward, any studios like that are working with you guys to make that gunplay.
No, actually, but you've picked on something that I find really important, and that is the gunplay. I figured, like, before the map looks nice, before any other part of it looks good, the gunplay has to work. And what we're trying to do here is, we're not trying to create a niche market where we just appeal to the same people that military simulators have always appealed to. Because I at one time was a Call of Duty player, do you know what I mean? And then I discovered this sort of game and the tension of it and the fear and also the skill in it. And I found it very hard to go back to the faster paced AAA shooters. So what we're trying to do...
That's how I was just gonna say that's how I feel with Siege right now. Like I played Siege and then I go back to Call of Duty World War II beta and like I just can't do it anymore.
Yeah. I definitely feel that once you've had that sort of taste of, I think it's probably the intellectual side of it, or at least the strategic side, or real strategy and really working together as a team. It's quite hard to give that up, and when you know that there's so much more. So for me, I mean, before this is a very, very roundabout answer to your question, but what we basically wanted to do is make sure that the gunplay matched the stability and solidity of a AAA shooter. It doesn't mean the exact same functionality. You're going to notice that all of our stuff takes longer for players to do. But for me, it's a huge amount about reliability. I used to play Call of Duty Modern Warfare quite competitively. And I've played a lot of shooters quite competitively, and I'm quite painful in that a lot of my Steam is filled with games where with screenshots of me doing quite well on kill to death ratio, and gunplay is very, very important to me. It has to be reliable, and you have to drop someone, and it's about matching players' expectations. If you fire at someone and you're expecting them to go down because of the experience you've already had in the game, then they need to go down. It's really, I place huge weight of emphasis on how satisfying the gunplay is.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I mean, gunplay definitely can turn you off of a game. If it's not right, turn you off a game real quick.
Yeah, I mean, and movement and stuff, and animations, and I mean, look, we still have plenty of bugs to iron out on our movement and our animations. Particularly the third-person animations, the animations you see of other players. But I'm feeling pretty happy with our first-person perspective animations and the gunplay and the way that feels.
Are there going to be any like cover mechanics in the game?
At the moment, I mean, one of the challenges has been because the maps are so big. I mean, as you can probably see from it, that it is very detailed as well. The idea here has been to design assets like the stone walls and stuff like that with a player crouch height in mind. While we may not have cover mechanics per se in so much as players locking to the cover like you'd see in Red Orchestra, we're going to have vaulting and things like that. And obviously, the only way to survive in this game is to use cover. In the playtesting we've been doing, you really, really need to think twice before you leave cover because it makes you very, very visible. So yeah, I mean, maybe not cover mechanics in the traditional Red Orchestra sense where you lock to it, but you're going to be setting your machine gun up on a wall. You're going to be vaulting over the wall, and you're obviously going to be hiding behind the wall, and you're going to be being suppressed behind the wall as well.
So how realistic then is Hell Let Loose? I know you mentioned that you didn't want to make it super niche like Arma. So is it kind of more something like insurgency realism?
No, I mean I think the goal with this was to try and mix the best of all worlds. From the start, I've never really wanted to emulate what Arma's done. I think they do a very, very, particularly when you look at the Ace mods and things like that. Arma have done total realism really well. I think for me, I really like what Red Orchestra 2 did, where it was brutal, it felt realistic. Obviously, the scale was quite small in so much as map sizes when you compare it to what we're trying to do. But you felt like bullets were deadly. You felt like your tactics worked. And that's really what we're trying to do here. I mean, the scale is the wild card for us. It's the thing that we haven't seen done before. And also the mixture of vehicles in there, of being able to call in airstrikes and other things like that. So I think we say it on our website, and what I thought back then probably captures it better than what I'm trying to say now. But we want it to be brutal, we want it to be reliable, but we don't want it to be chore-laden. It's important that when you get in the game that you're engaging with the game as we've designed it, and you're not just dragging crates around or cleaning a truck or something like that. So there's always levels of realism, but for us it's about bullet damage, it's about player movement speed, it's about setting up the perfect environment so that your World War II infantry tactics and drills actually work in the games.
So you said you've been doing quite a bit of playtesting lately too. How have the responses from people played it? How have they been?
Oh, it's hard to recount it because I think I can seem obviously hugely biased because I'm one of the developers. To be perfectly honest, so far I think it's been if I'm being honest, it's been refreshing for the team. We've obviously worked on this sort of behind closed doors for so long, and there was always that aspect in the back of our minds of what if this doesn't work? What if we like all the elements on paper, but what if we all put it together and people are kind of disinterested, or then they're not particularly into it. And so it has been really refreshing for the team to have some really great responses and really positive responses to the actual gameplay from people who have played it. So we're pretty excited, and we've been getting harassed on Steam and Discord as to when the next playtest is happening. So so we're feeling really positive. We're feeling really good about it, and we're really loving working with both our community on Reddit and Twitter and Facebook, and then also with our closed testing group.
Yeah, I can't imagine it'd be too hard to build a community around the World War II shooter in this day and age.
No, totally. Exactly. Everyone, and there are so many people who are so passionate and so thorough about their history that they really get involved and get engaged with kind of every World War II title that comes out. So we're really trying to make something worthy of them, I think. Worthy of the people who have wanted to play that large scale experience.
Well, I think that's all the questions I have for you. I'm really interested to see how this plays out because I wasn't really into the tactical or strategy shooters until I played Siege, and like I said, once you kind of, like you said, you get in that mindset of like working with your team and being so careful, and then it's hard to go back to shooters where it's just about taking out the other person.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's it. From my perspective, it's not. I think the game community tends to look at it as you are either a military simulator shooter player, it's boring, you like just using a compass for 40 minutes before you die, or you're a AAA shooter player. I would challenge that and say that I think people are AAA shooter players because they haven't experienced that addictive quality that you get in a more realistic game. They haven't experienced that in a context where they're comfortable, or at least some of the things that can be done to make them more comfortable have been done. For instance, proper training, or proper HUDs, or proper kind of little prompts as to how they should play, and also obviously a friendly community to help them through it as well.
Sure. Actually, I'm curious how, as far as your community goes, that's kind of like one of the big thing that's kind of been discussed around multiplayer shooters, like toxicity and all that. How do you plan to manage that to make sure that your community stays in that friendly zone? And with a game that's so focused on teamwork, that's kind of important.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really that ashamed to say it, and I don't think any of the dev team are, that if you want a game where you don't have to talk to people, where you don't have to engage with those around you in a semi-meaningful way, where you don't want to work together because you're tired and you've had a long day at work or school or whatever, I recommend you not to play Hell Let Loose. I recommend you play something else that is going to relax you or you'll enjoy. Because for us, that's every other game on the market. This is the one game where you do work together as a team in order to succeed and survive. This is the one game where being kind and building a reputation within your server and in your geographic area, whether it's the EU or North America or wherever, it's important because that'll affect the decisions that you make in game. That'll affect people's respect of you and your reputation within the server. So we're going to be releasing a lot of kind of media content as we lead up to our closed alpha release, basically setting the tone for the game. And in the gameplay video that we're about to release to begin our Kickstarter, you'll also see how a platoon plays together. You'll see what we as the devs feel is the archetypal way that a platoon should play together, the way they should communicate, and the tone they should take with each other. And if you're not interested in matching that, then I really think that Hell Let Loose may not be the game for you. And if that means players not playing our game for the sake of everyone else's experience being better, then that's it. But really, that's our position: is that there's any other game on the market is a game where you can go into by yourself and just shoot people and kill people. This is slightly different.
I like that stance. Like, you don't want to work with a team, don't play.
Yeah, I mean,
so
yeah, we're not.
That's pretty much what you have to tell people when they play sports too. Like, you don't want to play as a team. Get off.
That's right. I mean, well, that's the most bizarre thing, right? Is like games are games, and you imagine someone rocking up to the football, to the football field, and just telling everyone, you know what, look, guys, I've had a really busy day at work. I'm gonna go over here and play, and you guys can just be here as well. It's bizarre.
He's that guy at FIFA that takes shots at the goal from behind the halfway.
Yeah, exactly. From the penalty box, he's taking shots up at theirs. Yeah. Yeah. So no, that's our position here.
Any plans for esports? Because that's kind of a big thing now.
Yeah, no. I mean, especially initially, I would have said no, in so much as like indie devs and esports don't really mix so well, particularly realism shooters where there can be a lot of bugs, there's a lot of stuff that can go wrong. Your favorite player, and you see it even a little bit in Shroud playing PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, your favorite player who's amazing might get killed in the first 10 seconds of the game by a dude with a frying pan. So I mean, looking at PlayerUnknown, that's actually shown us that it is possible to do esports as an indie team, and also even if the experience is slightly unreliable. I'd say though that's not our focus. Our focus is always going to be adding. I'm more excited about adding a Tiger 2, or adding ricochet damage models to tank rounds, or even creating tools that allow content creators to film really amazing battles within the engine, within the game. I'm more excited about that than I am about hosting big tournaments. That said, it's become clear to us and anyone who's already been in playtesting that there's a huge capacity for competition here, because players are grouped into platoons of 6. There is a real sense of camaraderie within those, and a real sense of competition. So obviously we will be encouraging players to compete, and we'll look at how we can do that, in so much as getting whole divisions of 100 players into games, 50 players into games versus each other. So I just say that at the moment it's not our focus. You're not going to see any crate systems or anything like that from us as well. But
good.
Yeah. But
let's get some good cosmetics in there.
Yeah. I should say before I get murdered that we will have cosmetic tweaks within the game. However, what those will do is to serve sort of like you see in Verdun, where like your whole platoon will assume the appearance of an historical outfit, or an historical excuse me, I'm butchering my words, unit. So something that's been close to our hearts is the ability to represent lots of different units on the battlefield, and so we're going to look at doing that on a platoon level. So the groups of 6 guys, so that you can, you could all be wearing the splinter smocks, or you could be all airborne soldiers. But no, you're not going to be seeing cosmetics in so much as pink zebra stripe and and platform shoes and a pimp hat.
Dang it!
I know. What a disappointment.
Sure, everybody will be disappointed.
Yeah, totally. Particularly the real sticklers for realism and historicity.
Now I think that's all the questions I have for you. I'm really interested to see how this turns out for you guys. It sounds like a really neat shooter, and I really have to say I was really surprised when you showed me the gameplay footage. I've seen a lot of games, so
oh, that's good.
It takes a lot to surprise me. But I looked at it and was like, wow, this. I mean, just seeing guys shoot out of the shoot out of the trees, or like a tongue twister, forest area, and just like you don't even know where it's coming from. Like I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Oh well, no. Look, I'm glad it's a good surprise you've had, and hopefully we can continue lifting the bar and do more and more as we go on.
Sure. I guess the final question, which is inevitably going to be asked a million times when you start your Kickstarter, this is coming to Steam. Are there plans for you guys to launch this on console, or is it going to stay a PC-only title?
All right, so I can actually speak on that a little bit more now than previously. We're already on Steam. So all of our gameplay testing that you're seeing, all the footage that you're seeing, was all the clients, all the games were distributed to all testers via Steam keys. So we're already on there. We're hooking all of the subsystem stuff up in so much as being able to join on each other's game or invite people to platoons or invite people to games. So we're still working on that, and obviously we need to do achievements and other stuff like that. But we're already on Steam. In so much as consoles are concerned, I really don't want to promise anyone that we're going to be on consoles. What I will say though is we're watching very, very keenly and looking at what PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds does. It's a 100-player game created in Unreal Engine 4, the same engine as us. We are watching very closely as to the process they go through.
Cool. Alrighty, well, thank you very much for your time, Max, and really excited to see your Kickstarter go well for you guys. I don't see any way that it's not.
Oh, thanks very much, Nick. Thanks so much. And thank you for taking the time to chat to me.